Most people think forests become dangerous because of wild animals. They're wrong. Sometimes the forest isn't hiding predators. Sometimes it's hiding something that has learned how to wait. I never believed stories like that. At least, not until I spent one night at the ranger station everyone avoids after dark. I found the place while researching abandoned locations deep in the northern mountains. Most websites barely mentioned it. There were no ghost stories, no viral videos, no dramatic headlines. Only a short report from years ago. A remote ranger station had been permanently closed after several experienced rangers disappeared during routine patrols. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no explanation. Officially, the case remained unsolved. Unofficially, locals stopped entering that part of the forest after sunset. That was enough to get my attention. A week later, I packed my camera equipment, camping supplies, extra batteries, and enough food for one night. The nearest town was almost 2 hours away. Even there, people seemed uncomfortable whenever I mentioned the ranger station. Most simply changed the subject. Others quietly warned me to leave before evening. One elderly man sitting outside a small convenience store looked directly at me after hearing my destination. "You'll hear someone calling." I smiled politely. "Probably coyotes?" He slowly shook his head. "It won't sound like an animal." His expression never changed. "It'll sound like someone who knows your name." For the first time that day, I felt slightly uneasy. Still, I drove on. The paved road eventually disappeared, replaced by rough gravel winding through endless pine trees. The deeper I drove, the quieter everything became. No houses, no hikers, no parked vehicles, just towering trees stretching endlessly in every direction. After another 40 minutes, I reached a rusted metal gate hanging open beside an old wooden sign. The faded letters were barely readable. Black Creek Ranger Station. Someone had painted the word closed across it years ago. Nature had already begun reclaiming the entrance. Tall grass covered the road. Branches leaned across the path. It looked as though no vehicle had entered for decades. I grabbed my backpack, switched on my camera, and started walking. The station sat almost half a mile beyond the gate. The building itself wasn't large. A weathered wooden cabin. A radio tower rising behind it. A small observation platform overlooking the surrounding forest. Everything felt abandoned, yet strangely untouched. The windows were dusty but intact. The front door hung slightly open. Inside, old desks remained exactly where they had been left. Maps still covered one wall. Mugs sat on shelves. A calendar from nearly 20 years ago remained pinned beside the radio room. It felt less like an abandoned building, and more like everyone had simply walked outside, then never returned. I spent the next hour filming every room. Nothing unusual happened. No strange sounds. No mysterious shadows. Just silence. The kind of silence that slowly becomes uncomfortable because it never changes. Outside, the sun was already dropping behind the mountains. Golden light filtered through the pine trees before fading into long blue shadows. I decided to set up inside the station instead of camping outdoors. It seemed safer. As darkness settled over the forest, I climbed the observation platform to capture one last panoramic shot. The view stretched for miles, an endless sea of black pine trees. No lights, no roads, no signs of civilization, only wilderness. Then, I noticed something. Far below, between the trees, a brief flash of movement. Someone walking. I zoomed in. Nothing. The figure had vanished. Probably a deer, or maybe another explorer. That's what I told myself. I climbed back down and locked the cabin door from the inside. Night arrived quickly. The forest became completely black. Even with my flashlight, visibility ended just beyond the nearest trees. I checked my watch. 9:17 p.m. Everything remained perfectly quiet, until a single whistle echoed somewhere in the distance. Short, sharp, then silence. I stopped unpacking, listened. Nothing. 5 minutes passed. Then the whistle came again. This time, closer. Not loud, not threatening, just deliberate, as if someone wanted me to know they were still out there, waiting. The second whistle lingered in the air for several seconds before the forest swallowed it again. I stayed perfectly still. Maybe another hiker, maybe a hunter, maybe someone trying to figure out why there was a light inside a station that had supposedly been abandoned for years. That explanation made sense. At least, it did for a while. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The night air felt noticeably colder than before. The trees stood motionless beneath a sky hidden by thick clouds. There wasn't enough wind to move a single branch. I swept my flashlight across the tree line. Nothing. Hello? My voice disappeared into the darkness. No answer. Just as I turned to go back inside, the whistle came again, this time from my left. Much closer, no more than 50 yards away. I snapped the flashlight toward the sound. Nothing but rows of pine trees disappearing into blackness. For a few seconds, I could have sworn something had moved behind one of the trunks. But when I looked directly at it, there was nothing there. I shut the door, slid an old wooden cabinet in front of it, and tried to convince myself I was overreacting. The station had no electricity, so the only light came from my lantern and the camera screen. The silence returned. I kept filming, talking to the camera to calm my nerves. If someone's out there, they're probably messing with me. Hearing my own voice helped. It made the room feel less empty. Around 10:40 p.m., I decided to check the old radio room. The equipment looked ancient. Dust covered every switch. The microphone cable had almost completely rotted away. There was no chance any of it still worked. As I turned to leave, a burst of static exploded from the speaker. I froze. The radio hadn't even been connected to power. The static lasted only 2 seconds. Then, a voice. Broken. Distorted. Don't. Static. Follow. More static. The whistle. Silence. I stared at the radio. Every hair on my arm stood up. There had to be an explanation. Maybe interference. Maybe another transmitter somewhere in the mountains. But the equipment in front of me should have been dead. Completely dead. I slowly backed out of the room. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Above me. Slow. Heavy. One step. Pause. Another step. I looked toward the ceiling. The observation platform. Someone, or something, was walking across it. The sound continued for nearly 20 seconds. Wood creaked under steady weight. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed outside. The ladder leading to the platform was empty. I climbed as quickly as I could. At the top, there was no one. The platform stretched in every direction, completely deserted. Yet the wooden floor was still vibrating beneath my boots, as if someone had been standing there only moments earlier. I shined my light into the forest below. Nothing. Then, another whistle, directly behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the flashlight. No one. Only the empty platform. The whistle had sounded close enough that I should have seen whoever made it. Unless, they weren't standing where I expected. I climbed back down, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. When I reached the ground, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. Fresh footprints. Large boot prints. They circled the station once. Slowly. Methodically. But they never approached the front door. It was as if whoever made them had simply walked around the building. Watching. I followed the prints with my flashlight. They led toward the trees. Then stopped. Not faded. Not covered. Stopped. The final footprint ended in soft mud. Beyond it, there was nothing. No next step. No drag marks. No animal tracks. Just empty ground. A chill ran through my entire body. I backed away without taking my eyes off the forest. Once inside, I locked every window I could. I checked my camera footage, hoping it had captured something I had missed. The first hour looked normal. The exterior shots, the empty rooms, the tower, everything was exactly as I remembered. Then I reached the clip I had filmed from the observation platform before sunset. I watched myself slowly panning across the forest. Nothing unusual, until I zoomed into the trees. There, standing between two pines, a tall figure, perfectly still, facing the station. I never saw it while I was filming. The figure remained visible for almost 6 seconds before disappearing behind the trees without taking a single step. I replayed the footage again, and again. The shape never moved. It simply wasn't there anymore. My breathing became shallow. I looked toward the nearest window. Beyond the dusty glass, the forest remained silent. Then, from somewhere just outside the cabin, a calm voice spoke, barely above a whisper. It said my name, exactly the way my father used to. Hearing my name in my father's voice made every rational thought disappear. For one impossible second, I almost answered. Then I remembered something the old man in town had told me. It'll sound like someone who knows your name. I covered my mouth before I could speak. The voice came again. Soft, patient, almost comforting. It's okay. Come outside. Every instinct told me to stay exactly where I was. The cabin had suddenly become the only place that felt even remotely safe. I killed the lantern. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the camera's night vision remained. I crouched beneath one of the windows and waited. Silence. 1 minute. 2. 5. Nothing. Then, a slow knock. 3 taps. Not on the front door. On the window beside me. Tap. 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 I didn't move. The knocking stopped. A few seconds later, another 3 taps. This time from the opposite side of the cabin. It wasn't circling randomly. It knew exactly where I was. I forced myself not to look through the glass. People always make the same mistake in horror stories. They have to see. I wasn't going to. Then the radio came alive again. A burst of static hissed through the silence. The same broken voice returned. Louder this time. Don't. Let. It. Inside. The transmission cut out. At that exact moment, the cabin shook violently. Something slammed into the front door. Once. Hard enough to rattle the walls. Another impact followed. The old wooden cabinet scraped backward across the floor. Dust fell from the ceiling. I grabbed it with both hands and pushed with all my weight. A third impact. Even stronger. Then, everything stopped. Complete silence. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. The silence lasted nearly 10 minutes. It felt unnatural, as if the entire forest had stopped listening. I checked my watch. 12:58 a.m. Only 3 hours had passed since sunset. It felt like an entire night. I kept recording. The camera gave me something to focus on besides my own fear. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard footsteps again. Not outside. Inside. From the hallway leading to the radio room. Slow. Measured. 1 step at a time. Impossible. There was only one entrance. And it was still blocked. The footsteps stopped outside the radio room. The old door slowly creaked open by itself. No wind. No visible movement. Just darkness. Then, a flashlight rolled across the floor. It stopped in front of me, covered in dust. Old. Its faded initials caught the glow of my camera. JH. I remembered those letters. One of the missing rangers. His name had appeared in the newspaper article I had read before coming here. Someone, or something, had just placed his flashlight at my feet. Without thinking, I looked toward the hallway. A figure stood at the far end. Too tall, too thin. Its outline looked almost human, except its arms seemed impossibly long. It never walked. It never breathed. It simply stood there, watching. The camera's autofocus struggled to lock onto it. The image blurred, sharpened, blurred again. For a split second, the figure was gone. Then it appeared much closer. No footsteps, no sound, just closer. Every survival instinct took over. I shoved the cabinet aside, threw open the front door, and ran. The freezing air hit my face as I sprinted into the forest. Branches tore at my jacket. Roots caught my boots. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Not running, walking, always the same pace. No matter how fast I moved. I never looked back. The whistle echoed again, now from every direction. Left, right, ahead, behind. The forest no longer made sense. My GPS spun in circles. The compass on my watch pointed east, then west, then nowhere at all. Panic set in. I realized I wasn't escaping. I was running deeper into the woods. Then I saw it, a faint orange light between the trees. The station. Somehow, I had run in a complete circle. I stumbled onto the clearing, just as the first hint of dawn appeared behind the mountains. The whistle stopped. The footsteps stopped. The forest became quiet once more, exactly as it had been when I arrived. I didn't wait. I threw my gear into the truck and drove away without looking back. I never reported what happened. Who would believe me? Weeks later, I reviewed every second of my footage. Most of it matched what I remembered, except for one final clip. It had been recorded at 3:14 a.m. I never filmed anything at that time. The camera had been lying inside my backpack. The recording lasted only 11 seconds. It showed the empty observation platform under the moonlight. Nothing moved. Nothing happened. Until the last second. A man wearing an old ranger uniform slowly stepped into view. His face was hidden in shadow. He looked directly into the camera, raised one finger to his lips, and whispered, "He's still calling your name." The video ended. I deleted the footage that same night, or at least, I thought I did, because every few months, without warning, that same 11-second clip appears back in my camera's storage, with a new creation date, as if someone is still trying to make sure I never forget what was waiting at the ranger station everyone avoids after dark.